in terms of human freedoms? How can you say you are doing rule of law? You detain a citizen of Nigeria for 200 days without trial, and you say you are doing rule of law. Nigeria is not moving in any good direction. Thank you. That's my view.
Nonetheless, he was more emphatic in giving assurances that most of the developmental indicators were going to be addressed. Let me quote him. I took an oath to serve this country and do my best at all times. Like I said in the past, no excuse for poor performance from any of my appointees will be good enough. It is the reason I put in place policy coordination, evaluation, monitoring and delivery units in the presidency to make sure that the governance output improves the living conditions of our people. Do you still feel most of these are hanging in the balance? Your point of disagreement, is it in the terms of inputs, efforts, or in the policies themselves?
No, it's a promise. It's a statement of intention. I have said it before. Anybody can make a promise. Any parent can make a list. Any schoolboy can make a list. A list does not amount to a program of action. The program of action must include details of how those things, targets, details of how they are going to be achieved, the targets, and the outcomes. What is Nigeria going to be when you have achieved this, and when? For instance, our analysis of Nigerian society during our own time was that in order to develop, Nigeria needed 1, 2, 3, 4. And we set about tackling those things. As far back as February 1957, during the first Action Group government, the first bill that was submitted to the Western House of Assembly in February 1957 was the bill on education. And shortly after that, 400,000 children of primary school age started school on the same day in Western region. It was the most revolutionary achievement of any country at that time. We are not interested in promises. Buhari made more promises. Buhari's promises were even more laudable. Because Buhari promised decentralization, or what is it called? Deregulation, not deregulation. He promised restructuring, even though he called it by another name. He did not fulfill any of them. There was nothing he did not promise. So why should we be jumping because somebody made a promise? That's my own view.
You've served in governments where people acclaim that government actually performed, and you were active in ensuring that those policies worked. What were you expecting in clear terms to have heard from that speech, or what should have been the probable outlook for you?
Thank you very much. One of the problems plaguing the country today, even a few days ago, about 150 people were killed in Plateau State. Citizens of Nigeria. And this has been almost a weekly occurrence, and this has been going on. Insecurity. I expected action. If I were President Tinubu, within my week of coming to office, I will submit a bill to the National Assembly for state police. I will submit a bill. And I'm hereby calling on him, submit a bill to the National Assembly for state policing. So it's not compulsory. So that those states, for instance, one of the reasons why I love the late governor of Ondo State, Akarodolu, when they started killing his people, he championed, because the constitution of Nigeria does not allow state police, he championed Amoteku, a kind of security network. There are many states that are willing to fund their state police. And as of today, many states are funding the federal police, buying vehicles, buying equipment, and corrupting the police. And most of them, their loyalty is not there. I'm calling on President Buhari, submit a bill to the National Assembly in the next few days, authorizing or giving legal backing for constitutional backing of course, it has to be I'm sure that this will receive support from majority of the states. So that those states that want it can establish state police to reduce insecurity. Can you imagine a situation in Bender State where Fulani herdsmen will occupy a place and everybody is afraid because the authorities at the head will not allow them? And there's one professor, I think he's from Ole, who was the Minister of Education. Can't remember, Minister for Professor Mogo Buare. He said, look, the local people can deal with Fulani herdsmen, but for the support they are receiving from the federal government. That's what I would advise, number one. Now, I was expecting to hear merely saying you have increased, what is it called? A kind of marginal increase in budget will not work in the education budget. The problem must be frontally confronted, like I told you happened in Western region in 1957. As far back in 1976, a military dictator, General Obasanjo, established free education at all levels throughout Nigeria. Free universal primary education, UPE, which it was just a kind of expansion of what Awolowo did in 1957 in Western region. And it was stated in the education policy at that time, which was published and gazetted, that Nigeria would embrace universal secondary education at, quote and unquote, at the earliest possible time. Why should the president of the most populous country in the world, overburdened with illiteracy, making a policy statement, and is not talking about how to liberate the people from intellectual backwardness? The primary education is fundamental and basic. Go to our secondary schools, go to our primary schools. You shed tears, you'll be sorry for what is going on. Recently, there was a policy of employment of teachers in the state. It was politicized. People who were taken are not people who are ready to work. I told you before, I'm here, don't go anywhere. People come and tell me what is happening. A headmaster told me that the people they sent to her were living in Benin and Warri and are not willing to come to school in the village. So education must be brought close to the people. Security must be democratized. And then, I've said it before and I like to repeat it. What kind of society do you have in view? Is it more of the same? Merely saying that you want to improve to whose benefit? How are you going to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor in Nigeria? Look, I think it was Senator Shehu Sani who let us into how much the National Assembly legislators were receiving. At a time when the minimum wage was 30,000 naira, less than 50 pounds, less than $50. What is the type of work that National Assembly people are doing that makes them to be able to receive such money? What kind of society do you have in view? This is very, very important. At the time that Jakonde was doing that developmental magic in Lagos, Jakonde was riding using his private car to work and living in his private house. And I'm sure you are aware of chief executives of states in Europe that take train to work. These people who are leading us are not prepared to make sacrifice. They want to make us their footstool. They want to live like lords and lord it over us. Well, that's not the type of society that we want. What type of society do you want to build? Telling us that you have borrowed money to build this, to what end? What is the end result? What is the end purpose? What kind of society do you have in view? We want to know. We've not been told that. These are gaps in the developmental strategy. In fact, there is no strategy as far as I'm concerned. In terms of stated objectives, instead of tools that are going to be, that is tactics to achieve those objectives. In terms of structure and in terms of personnel within that structure. Because why the leadership is very important is that the leader must spell out the ultimate objective. If the objective is not clear, the followers cannot operate outside that vision that the leadership has brought forward.
Well, for you, you expected more of actions and actionable plans.
There is no action. Nothing has been achieved. If nothing has been achieved, even the so-called removal of fuel subsidy was just a precipitate announcement without any plan of how it's going to be implemented. The Forex announcement was just announced, no plan of its implications. Nothing whatsoever. Sharing money is not a developmental strategy. Nothing has been achieved in the past 7 months. That's my own view.
Well, it's always a delight engaging you on national discourse. Immeasurable thanks to you, Pa Biose, for your buoyancy of disposition and for giving us your time.
Thank you very much indeed.